Sustainability Defined would like to thank MiaDonna and Company for sponsoring this episode. For more on MiaDonna's sustainability commitments and activities, check out MiaDonna.com. That's MiaDonna.com.
All right, Definers, welcome back to Sustainability Defined, where Scott and I are here defining sustainability, one topic and one bad joke at a time. This is episode 84 on sustainable jewelry, Scott, and we have a very momentous and festive occasion to celebrate this episode. Isn't that right?
Is it Festivus?
It's not quite Festivus. Not quite.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, we'll talk about that. But let's get into the outline here, Jay. So first, we'll talk about what is sustainable jewelry and is there a difference with ethical jewelry? Then, what are the environmental impact considerations around jewelry production? Then we're going to branch into what are the social and political considerations around jewelry production? What are the different sustainable jewelry options, such as lab-grown diamond? How prevalent are they, and how are they produced versus traditional options? And then, what should definers look for and consider when shopping for sustainable jewelry? We always like to make this relevant for you all and actionable. And then lastly, we'll move into our expert guest. She's awesome. Anna-Mieke Anderson, founder and CEO of MiaDonna and Company. And Jay, you were referring to a momentous occasion. Yes, Shannon and I are getting married August 24th.
Woo!
And we are very thankful to MiaDonna and Company because they gave us a discount on the rings as part of the sponsorship. So thanks for that. And Definers, you can enjoy a discount too on MiaDonna's gorgeous, ethically sourced jewelry. It could be for an engagement ring, a wedding band, or something special for you or someone close to you. You can get 10% off your purchase of $500 or more at MiaDonna when you use code DEFINERS, DEFINERS, during checkout. That's DEFINERS at checkout at MiaDonna.com. And this offer does expire December 31st, 2024, so hopefully you are listening before then.
Love it.
All right, so Jay, first section. What is sustainable jewelry? Is there a difference with ethical jewelry?
So while these two terms are often used in the same context, there are actually differences in the terms. Quote, sustainable jewelry often refers to the environmental impact of the jewelry from its materials and production processes, while, quote, ethical jewelry typically refers to the social impact of the product, especially in the way it was sourced. Of course, as you can probably assume, jewelry can be made both from sustainable materials and in a more sustainable way, and also be ethical. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, but definitely a difference that's important to understand as we make our way through this intro.
It's a little maybe counterintuitive, Jay, because when we define sustainability, we often include social aspects, but I guess for purposes of how people commonly refer to sustainable jewelry, ethical jewelry, sustainable is just environmental.
Exactly.
Okay, so fine jewelry is made from precious metals. Think gold and silver and stones, like diamonds or gemstones. These are mined from deep in the Earth's mantle, produced from Earth's resources with extensive human labor. Understanding where these materials come from, how the piece was made, and the impacts from mining and production are key to understanding if your jewelry was made sustainably and sourced ethically. So a lot of what we'll talk about today when it comes to sustainable and ethical jewelry will focus on the materials side, as there are a lot of environmental and social impacts that come from raw materials extraction and production before it ends up in the store for you to purchase.
Right, so let's just summarize that here. In short, ethical jewelry has a focus on the human side of the jewelry supply chain, like fair labor practices and working conditions, and sustainable jewelry is focused on the environmental side. Okay, we've got that straight. So Scott, help us break down what are the environmental impact considerations around jewelry production?
Right. So first, let's talk environmental impact considerations. A 2018 article from Forbes found that raw materials are a key challenge. Since these pieces are made with precious metals or gemstones, they all started out in the ground, likely deep in the ground and not easily accessible, and therefore they had to be mined to be used in a ring or necklace. Now, some of the common environmental implications of getting those raw materials from deep underground for our jewelry via mining are pollution, deforestation, and impacts on biodiversity. So Jay, let's do each one of those.
Right. Let's start with toxic waste and pollution. The mining and production that is needed to create the gold and silver used within much of our jewelry creates a lot of waste and has the potential to contaminate the land and water in the surrounding areas. When mining for the metals that we want to use for our jewelry, other heavy metals are produced as a byproduct. These leftover materials are waste called tailings. They often are made of crushed rocks, water, small quantities of other metals like mercury and copper, along with waste from the additives that are used in metals processing, like cyanide or sulfuric acid. Often, these tailings are stored above ground in dams, which can fail or collapse, causing leakage into the surrounding areas. In some smaller scale mines or illegal mines, there is no waste strategy, and these byproducts are released into the environment and local water bodies. One shocking statistic is that for every 18 karat gold ring, there are about 20 tons produced of toxic waste, which includes cyanide, arsenic, and lead. This means that each year, around 180 million tons of toxic waste is dumped into waterways as a result of gold mining. That's just a hard one to swallow.
Yeah, and these tailings ponds, they're a problem in so many things that we produce and that we mine. It's like kind of a hidden thing from your general consumer, but they're in so many places, oftentimes with inadequate protection to make sure that they don't go where we don't want them to go. And just as we produce more stuff, these tailings ponds just get bigger and bigger. Big problem.
Ouch.
Okay, so next, deforestation, another huge concern in this industry. Mining for diamonds and other minerals requires that large land areas are altered or moved to make mining possible. It is estimated that for every carat of diamonds that are mined, nearly 100 square feet of land is moved and more than 5,500 pounds of mineral waste is created. Large open pits or quarries are where the majority of mining takes place, and these are very destructive ways to gain the materials needed for jewelry. In addition to just the land used for mines, within large mining operations, infrastructure must be built around the site to create access to the mines. This includes roads, along with waste and water infrastructure. If not well managed, mining operations often lead to large losses of habitat that are valuable to local communities and wildlife.
And unfortunately, Scott, we're not done here. On a related note, the raw material extraction that goes into jewelry production is taking place in many areas that hold a lot of biodiversity. In fact, 75% of active mines and exploration sites are within regions defined as, quote, high conservation value. Tied to deforestation, mining causes habitat destruction, fragmentation, and degradation. This significantly impacts biodiversity in these key ecological areas.
Jay, it kind of reminds me I've heard more and more people talking about how for the minerals and other things we need for the clean energy transition, that they're in some really tough spots, be it deep in the ocean, like deep underground, or just in these very high conservation areas that you rightly mentioned. So I understand it. It's more like a toughie when it comes to the minerals for clean energy transition, but just for people to wear as jewelry, tougher.
Sure.
And especially when we have this very clear alternative with lab-grown stuff and recycled and all the things we'll talk about.
Yeah, Definer, stay tuned. We're excited to break in all these new options.
So let's talk about an example, Jay. The Amazon rainforest. Small-scale gold mining has expanded quickly over the past 15 years. The mining there has posed both environmental and health threats due to the presence of mercury, but also the deforestation. Research findings have shown that the mercury from these poorly regulated and often illegal mining operations are affecting the terrestrial mammals that call the rainforest home. And many of these mines don't follow environmental regulations that restrict deforestation and the use of liquid mercury within the process. As a result, habitats are destroyed, and mercury has started to make its way into the environment and into endangered species when they ingest plants, insects, or other animals. While scientists aren't aware of the full effects just yet, the Amazon remains one of the highest areas for biodiversity globally. Many animals here are already at a high risk of extinction due to rainforest destruction, and with the increase of gold mining in the area, the threat of extinction is increased. Songbirds that live in areas near these gold mining operations have been found to have mercury levels as much as 12 times higher than those further away from mines. Similar findings have been found in primate species and other native animals. It's pretty striking findings there. For more on biodiversity, check out episode 72.
Okay, let's jump to our next chapter and ask, what are the social and political considerations around jewelry production? So focusing more on this social component, Scott, that we teased at the top of the episode. The majority of the metals and minerals that are mined come from the most economically disadvantaged areas on Earth. As you can imagine, jewelry production has a disproportionate impact on communities that are already bearing the brunt of other social harms. Research from the World Bank found that at least 100 million people worldwide are involved in artisanal mining. These are the mines that are most often used to produce precious metals and gemstones. Artisanal mining, often called small-scale mining, is where workers are using basic tools to extract metals and gemstones from the earth. Unfortunately, because this is fairly informal, there are not many rules, regulations, and oversight into how these are procured. Because of this, digging for these resources is often done under dangerous and exploitative conditions, and there are often instances of child labor and other human rights abuses. Many workers are not well paid for their labor and can be working for wages as low as $1 a day.
Jay, this is crazy because it's like we talk so much about mining and deforestation, all this, but just the people literally doing the work. I mean, it's horrible in and of itself.
Right. I mean, Scott, this harkens back to our supply chain episode from not too long ago, where there's just all these really painful underlying inputs that you're not seeing as the end consumer.
Right. And it's so many people. You said 100 million people worldwide just in artisanal mining.
It truly blows your mind.
Totally. And you mentioned our human rights in the supply chain episode. For people who want to check that out, it's number 77. And in that episode, we shared that there's actually an estimated over 1 million children working in these artisanal mines without industrial equipment, and their labor ultimately ends up in the supply chains for gold sold across the world. Through these processes, children are working long hours in dangerous mines that can collapse. They're working with sharp tools, highly toxic substances like mercury that damage their health, and many of these children, they're foregoing schools to work for these meager mining wages to help support their families. It's really just heartbreaking.
Right. And so definers, if you're thinking, oh, maybe it's these small mines that are the issue and the larger ones are okay, well, we're going to pop that bubble. As we discussed a bit ago in the environmental impact section, large-scale industrial mines take up a lot of land. In addition to the environmental changes, these huge swaths of land and the corridors that connect mines often result in the displacement of local residents and reduce the quality of life for those that live near the large mining operations. The soil degradation and poor water quality that is bad for the environment is also bad for those living nearby. Further, exposure to dangerous chemicals and heavy metal pollution is common for those that live near mining operations, posing adverse health effects like respiratory problems and irritation, skin rashes, liver damage, and increased instances of lung, skin, kidney, and bladder cancers. Scott, unfortunately, I sound like one of those new medicine ads you see on the TV, you're at risk for XYZ. Still the case here.
Yeah.
Apart from just the mining of precious stones, after they're mined, many workers are involved in the cutting and polishing of these stones. Often this work is done without safety equipment and protective gear like safety glasses or masks. When these stones are cut, dust is produced that can be inhaled into the lungs or ingested, which can lead to many adverse health effects like silicosis, the result of inhaling silica, a substance found in many rocks. When these rocks are cut, the small particles embed themselves into the lungs' air sacs, where they cannot be removed, causing lungs to become inflamed, resulting in long-term health problems.
Jeez. I mean, even the processing of it, I hadn't really considered that much before we prepared for this episode, but it makes sense. And it's the same with like meat production, and like that's often a lost step that people forget about that has its own impact.
Absolutely.
So low wages are a major problem within the mining industry. And while it's estimated that the diamond trade contributes around $8.5 billion a year to Africa, the wages of diamond miners, they're not well reflected in the pay for most workers, and they're not invested back in the local communities. It's estimated that 1 million diamond diggers in Africa earn less than $1 per day. That is just totally unlivable.
There are also some political implications of jewelry production that consumers often don't think about when buying jewelry. You've maybe heard the phrase blood diamond or conflict mineral being used when referring to jewelry and technology production. These materials are coming from regions of the world that are experiencing conflicts like war or genocides, and portion of the revenues from raw materials trading is used to fund ongoing conflict.
Right, so the United Nations defines blood diamonds as any diamond that is mined in areas by forces opposed to the legitimate, internationally recognized government of a country and that is sold to fund military action against that government. This term was created during the 1990s when civil wars were widespread in portions of Western and Central Africa by rebel groups within diamond-rich areas. In the countries of Sierra Leone, Angola, and the Democratic Republic of Congo specifically, these conflicts garnered worldwide attention. During this time, diamonds were mined in rebel-controlled areas and sold to merchants alongside diamonds from legitimate mines, as once a diamond enters the market, there's no way to distinguish these from others. Unfortunately, due to this, money from the sale of these diamonds were used to buy arms and fund extremely violent altercations within the war. In 2000, the UN produced a report that found that at the time conflict diamonds were extremely prevalent in markets across the globe. This spurred calls from human rights groups for better traceability of diamonds to combat these human rights concerns. In Sierra Leone, it's estimated that even small volumes of conflict diamonds can have a lasting impact. It's estimated that between 1991 and 2002, over 50,000 people were killed and 2 million or more were displaced as a result. So, Jay, I think the key reason we're talking about all this is that just because you avoid a blood diamond doesn't mean you've avoided all issues. Like blood diamonds, conflict diamonds, they're a very specific kind of diamond,
right,
where they funded the uprising against a certain government, whatever it is. But there's a lot of other issues beyond this.
Right. And it's not as if this is a thing of the past, Scott. Conflict diamonds, unfortunately, continue to be produced today. By volume in 2022, the top 5 diamond-producing countries are Russia, with 41.9 million carats produced annually, followed by Botswana, Canada, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and South Africa. In Russia, Alrosa, which is the state-owned diamond mining company, was sanctioned by the U.S. government due to its funding being linked to the Russian military for its ongoing war in Ukraine. Although this does not necessarily meet the definition of a conflict diamond technically, as these diamonds are not being mined in an active war zone, there are still human rights concerns from groups over diamonds of Russian origin, as they are the top diamond producing country in the world.
Did you know that, Jay? I didn't know Russia was so prevalent in diamond production, nor have I heard anyone connect it to the war in Ukraine like this.
No, same, Scott, and nor did I realize that Canada was also up there.
Yeah, good on them.
Yeah.
I guess.
Right.
Okay, so moving to the minerals side, conflict minerals are the raw materials or minerals that come from parts of the world where conflict is happening. Very similar to the issues we just discussed with conflict diamonds, the sale and purchase of these products are often used as a major source of funding for military groups. Common conflict minerals like gold, tantalum, tin, and tungsten are found within jewelry as well as in consumer electronics, automotive, medical equipment, and aerospace. In 2010, the United States passed Section 1502 of the U.S. Dodd-Frank Act, which was the first legislation that was passed with the aim of ending the link between conflict mineral trade and armed groups within the Congo region. This legislation requires U.S.-listed companies to complete due diligence checks to determine if their mineral purchases have benefited any armed groups and publicly report on the measures taken to determine this. While this legislation doesn't apply to many small jewelry companies, as it only applies to publicly traded U.S. companies, it does help deter the trade of these minerals within larger producers.
Okay, definers, we've touched all this really gruesome, hard to swallow stuff. Let's start being a little proactive here and ask, what are the different sustainable jewelry options, such as lab-grown diamonds? How prevalent are they, and how are they produced versus these traditional options? So first, let's talk about more sustainable diamonds, starting with lab-grown diamonds. Earth-mined diamonds are formed in the Earth's mantle from natural heat and pressure on carbon, likely between 1 billion and 3 billion years ago. Lab-grown diamonds, on the other hand, are created in a lab rather than deep inside the Earth. There are 2 distinct techniques for creating lab-grown diamonds: chemical vapor deposition, or CVD, and high pressure, high temperature, or HPHT. They differ in their processes and the conditions under which diamonds are formed, but importantly, both produce diamonds that are physically, chemically, and visually identical to earth-mined diamonds.
So if you want to impress your lab-grown diamond salesperson, you can ask them, was this made with CVD or HPHT?
Right. Exactly.
So let's talk about what these are. CVD diamonds are crafted through a process where carbon molecules are deposited onto a carbon substrate, forming a diamond crystal over time. CVD diamonds often exhibit exceptional purity, but tend to be less expensive than HPHT diamonds, as if that's a negative. HPHT diamonds are formed by subjecting carbon to extreme pressure and high temperatures, which replicates the conditions in which diamonds are formed in nature. HPHT diamonds tend to have a higher price point and are ideal for use in jewelry with their color enhancement techniques.
So regardless of whether CVD or HPHT is used, you get a diamond that is, quote, grown within a laboratory setting using technology rather than being mined. This process virtually eliminates the social supply chain issues from mined diamonds and reduces its environmental impacts.
And of course, Jay, there's no such thing as a free diamond. There are trade-offs here. One study found that the greenhouse gas emissions produced in lab diamonds was quite high due to more energy usage versus earth-mined diamonds. However, the trade-offs on the social side, of course, were much less. Other studies showed that the total environmental footprint, not just greenhouse gas emissions, of earth-mined diamonds was significantly higher than the lab-grown diamonds, as the energy and destruction to extract diamonds from underground was significant.
So, Scott, this was actually a pretty compelling stat we had here. I wouldn't have guessed this was this high, but lab diamonds are growing in popularity as nearly 70% of millennials are considering buying lab-grown alternatives as compared to earth-mined diamonds. So that was actually pretty encouraging.
I would think it'd be that high. I mean, in part, Jay, it's just so much less expensive, period.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So with traceability, some earth-mined diamond companies are using blockchain, an advanced database system to store information, to track a diamond's journey from mine to market. With these blockchain-verified diamonds, there's a digital permanent record of where the diamond came from and how it was sourced. This gives a lot of insight and peace of mind to the consumer about how the product was sourced through transparency and traceability.
Okay, so definers, again, we are talking about more sustainable diamonds here. We started with lab-grown diamonds. Now let's look at recycled jewelry. In general, the use of recycled materials plays a big role in increasing the sustainability of production by conserving natural resources, reducing waste, and lowering the carbon footprint.
All right, so as an example, the jewelry industry accounts for nearly 17% of the global silver demand. When making the switch to recycled jewelry, you're lowering that demand for new materials in favor of ones that are already in existence. And when recycled metals are used, metal scraps or existing jewelry are sorted and melted down in a high-temperature furnace. This liquid metal can then be poured into mold or wires and shaped. Once cooled, the metal can then be polished, shaped, and finalized into a piece. Gold, silver, copper, and brass are some common metals that are used in recycled jewelry, as they can easily be recycled and reused over and over again. Jay, this reminds me of a common beneficial point that I talk about with aluminum beverage cans. You recycle those babies. That aluminum, it doesn't degrade in quality when you recycle, so it allows it to keep on going.
Yeah, Scott, I've been thinking this whole time, there's probably some good undertones here that you've got in common between this jewelry topic we're breaking down as well as the mining for the aluminum that you're so involved with, right?
Totally. And there's another connection here in this next one. So one of the main reasons that recycled metal is a great alternative to new material is that there's no compromise in quality of recycled metals. And through the recycling process, the metal retains its high quality and remains just as durable as jewelry made from newly mined materials. Plus, and this is the one I wanted to get to, recycling metals is less energy intensive than mining. This lowers the energy and greenhouse gas emissions from production, while also lowering the demand for mining materials and helps to keep metal out of the landfill. So, on a similar vein, what we say with aluminum beverage can recycling is that recycling the aluminum entails 95% less greenhouse gas emissions than making new virgin aluminum. So I'm sure it's the same here. Big greenhouse gas emission reductions from just recycling the metal, in part because making the virgin can be fairly energy intensive.
Time for me to insert my own little personal anecdote here. I was very fortunate to be able to reuse stones from my great-grandmother's ring for Anna. So it was kind of a special way to circumvent a lot of this kind of raw material type stuff that we're talking about here. And I can say that recycled rock is just as special as a brand new one, if not, actually, there's no doubt about it, infinitely more so.
Yeah, more meaningful, yeah.
Okay, so Definers, on a related note, there is a lot of gold that is found in our tech devices like phones and laptops, speaking of recycling. Around $60 million worth of gold and silver are thrown away annually, and only 13% of electronics are recycled responsibly across the globe. So recycling your technology plays a large role in the mining industry, and it can also play a role in the jewelry industry. So Definers, maybe they'll start hanging out in landfills looking for all this gold and silver.
I mean, there are developing countries where there are many people hanging out in landfills trying to find the metals because they're worth a lot.
Okay, Scott, we've talked lab-grown diamonds. We've talked recycled jewelry. Lastly, let's talk about more sustainable material alternatives in this section. There's a growing trend of jewelry that is being made from more renewable materials like wood, bamboo, or recycled glass rather than finite ones like diamonds and precious metals. Let's break that down.
Okay, so glass has become popular in the recycled jewelry space as it can be easily recycled and used in pieces like rings and pendants as an alternative to gemstones. Glass can be easily collected from existing waste streams, melted, shaped, and polished to create beautiful and unique jewelry. One benefit of choosing glass over natural gemstones is the more positive environmental effect. Reuse of glass reduces waste in landfills and lowers the burden on natural ecosystems. In addition, mining is not needed for glass production, further helping reduce the environmental and social impact we've discussed in the episode. In addition, much of the recycled glass jewelry that you will find is handcrafted by local artists. Purchasing these handcrafted pieces is also a good way to support your local communities, while also finding fashionable jewelry to wear. I have to say, Jay, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone wearing like a ring that's got glass in it instead of some sort of diamond. Have you?
I don't, but I do think I've seen someone wearing a wood ring.
Oh, me too, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So wood has become more popular as a sustainable alternative to metal in jewelry. So, of course, when sourced in a sustainable way and crafted responsibly, wood in jewelry is a more affordable alternative. Some like wood because it's lightweight compared to its metal alternatives, making it more comfortable and easy to wear. It can also be used to create some pretty unique designs that can't be accomplished with metal. I guess I would just be scared of denting it, Scott. If I have a wooden ring and I fall on it, is that going to chip it?
Sure. I mean, I guess maybe the same with glass. I don't know.
Yeah, true. All right, Scott, we always talk about how to bring these big topics down to the definer level.
Yep.
Let's break down the few things that we can do as consumers when we're looking to buy jewelry in the most sustainable way.
Well, one thing we can do as consumers is do our research, and hopefully this episode has helped a bit. Sometimes it just takes some searching to find ethical gemstones. Take a look at the brands that you're buying from. Are they transparent about their sourcing and production practices? Typically, companies that are more sustainable have information about how the materials for their pieces are sourced. If you don't see any information on this, don't be afraid to ask about where do these materials come from and how do they ensure that there's fair labor practices within their company and they're not using child labor, things like that. One way to do this is to look for certifications like the Responsible Jewelry Council, or RJC, and the Fair Mind Gold and Silver certification. These certifications involve third-party audits that verify that companies adhere to rigorous sets of standards for social, ethical, and environmental performance. In order to receive these certifications, specific requirements around traceability, conflict mitigation, environmental protection, and fair labor conditions must be proven and verified. Making an effort as a consumer to support companies and brands that adhere to these certifications can be a great start to find more sustainable and ethical options.
In addition, one of the best ways that you can shop sustainably and ethically is to find pieces that are made with recycled metal. It's not only the best way to support recycling efforts, but it lowers the demand for newly mined materials that have negative environmental and social impacts. Shopping lab-grown similarly reduces demand for newly mined materials.
One other option, Jay, that we haven't mentioned yet that is probably the most sustainable of them all is to just buy your jewelry secondhand. Buying pre-owned is often the more affordable option. Plus, buying pre-owned jewelry is good for the planet as it creates less demand on the supply chain for production of something new. You don't even have the recycling footprint. And just like thrifting clothes, buying jewelry secondhand means there's less mining and pollution as these pieces are kept in circulation. Lots of people do this already when passing down sentimental family jewelry to the next generation, kind of like what you were just talking about, Jay. And sentimental value, priceless, and sustainable. Gotta love it. And you can be the source of pre-owned material for other people. For example, the I Have Wings Breast Cancer Foundation accepts donations of used jewelry as a tax-deductible contribution to the group, and then it cleans, repairs, and resells them to fund its programs. And some may support other nonprofits in need of jewelry and or senior craft projects. So we'll have a link on our website to that, or you can just Google it.
In addition, investing in quality pieces reduces the need to buy new jewelry frequently, as it will be durable and last a long time. I love that last little plug. All right, Scott, let's get to it. Let's introduce our expert guest, Anna-Mieke Anderson, the founder and CEO of MiaDonna and Company.
Right, so Anna-Mieke Anderson, dedicated mother, avid philanthropist, and a successful entrepreneur. She's the founder and active CEO of MiaDonna and Company, which was established in 2005 in Portland, Oregon. She has worked to build a more sustainable jewelry company that continues to push boundaries to create a socially responsible diamond industry.
Anna-Mieke also founded the Greener Diamond Foundation, which works to rebuild communities that have been negatively impacted by the harvest of diamonds. The MiaDonna team donates hours of staff time as well as 10% of net profits from every purchase to the foundation. She's got a fantastic story, Scott. I'm excited to dive in.
All right, Definers, we have now come to the interview portion of our sustainable jewelry episode. We have Anna-Mieke Anderson, founder and CEO of MiaDonna. So Anna-Mieke, thanks for joining us from Oregon.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a wonderful topic to talk about.
I agree.
Yeah.
Let's get to it. Tell us more about you. Your background is so interesting. How did you, I know, but I want the listeners to know more about how you got into the diamond industry initially.
Oh my goodness. Well, I didn't get into it to be, a corporate tycoon or anything like that. It was pure activism that really started this movement. So it was back in 2005, and I had found out I had most likely purchased a conflict diamond myself. I was raised in Australia, and I feel like in Australia we're raised to be very eco-friendly. We've got a very outdoor culture, and I was raised to be a conscious consumer, and I was very disappointed at myself that by buying this product, I absolutely wasn't a conscious consumer, and I had unintentionally hurt a whole generation of children. So to make things right in my own mind, I started sponsoring a little boy and his mother in a mining community. And that was going to be the extent of my philanthropy. I just I made it right. But something really unexpected happened is that we developed a relationship between the mother and
just writing
her
letters?
child, writing letters back and forth. Yeah. And it was very interesting because I got very unbiased information, right? It wasn't filtered by media or anyone that had any other motives than just wanting to have a connection with someone else. And so I was learning so much about what really was happening in mining communities. And I'll never forget the day that this little 7-year-old boy wrote to me and said, I had a great summer because only one of my classmates was killed.
Oh my God.
Right. I was a mother. I had a 1-year-old. My daughter is actually MiaDonna, named the company after her. And I was pregnant with my son. And I just thought, you know what, I can't stop here. This can't be the end of my philanthropy. I need to do this on a bigger scale. How do I sponsor more families and their children? And so that was the simplest business plan of MiaDonna at the beginning.
Wow. Okay. And then you started this way before the lab grow and stuff. It's pretty common today. There's multiple providers. But when you were starting, how did you even come across lab grow as a thing? How'd you find it?
My goal was to sell conflict-free fine jewelry, to be the sustainable funding source for the philanthropy side and going back into these mining communities and reinvesting in them. Soon found out that nothing that came from the earth could be considered conflict-free. I mean, we weren't even getting into the environmental. There were no environmental regulations. And obviously there was a ton of humanitarian concerns. And so I thought, well, at first I was really disheartened, thought, well, I can't do this. I can't contribute to the problem while trying to solve it. So that's when I turned to science. I've got a very scientific mind, and science always kind of holds the key. I started doing some research, found out that obviously, we'd been creating diamond films for a very long time. We've been using it for industrial purposes and medical purposes.
Okay.
Ferrari were actually using it at the time to coat their cars because it was chip resistant. NASA had their own version called Ultra C Diamond that they were coating everything that went into space with diamond film because it was heat resistant. So that's where it really triggered the idea. Well, if we can create diamond films, how do we get it into gem quality? And that's when I started working with scientists who grow diamond in a lab.
But working with scientists, how did you find the scientists?
A lot of cold calling. There were only two companies in America at the time that were still researching and developing lab-grown diamonds. But back then, they were a quarter of a carat and they were yellow in color. They were not what we have today.
Okay, so you found these scientists working on lab-grown diamonds. Like, now you started this small company. Like, what are the challenges that you were facing when you started it? How did you work through those to where you are today? That sort of thing.
I think there's two answers to that question, because I didn't just start a business. I had to start a new industry and develop a new scientific product and go up against one of the most ruthless industries, I suppose, we've ever seen. They definitely did not want lab-grown diamonds to exist. And I think it was my blind optimism, and I believe I was very, very naive to how big this problem was. And I think that was actually a blessing in disguise. I just kind of marched in there and went, this makes perfect sense. We're going to grow diamonds in a lab and we're going to give our money away. A lot of people didn't like that. So there was many, many challenges for my company, which was a little bit unique. To begin with, lab-grown diamonds at the time were only a quarter of a carat and they were yellow in color. I actually brought one. I don't know if you can see it here. Oh. So that's the first diamond we ever created.
Oh, it's like people with the first dollar they ever earned.
Right.
You have
the first diamond, right?
Yeah.
And then this is the one we created in 2016. It's 6.28 carats, which was the largest in America at that time. So it's a huge scientific breakthrough for us. So at the beginning, a quarter of a carat yellow diamond was not going to satisfy the consumer demand for diamonds. And so I'm like, well, what can we do? Can we speed this up? How can we do it? But the larger we were growing the diamonds, the yellower they were getting, and the more unstable the crystal structure was getting. So we were losing about 90% of what we were growing when we were trying to cut it. And so we thought we were about a decade away from ever having a viable retail model of a lab-grown diamond. So we developed a hybrid model to begin with, which is kind of a placeholder at the beginning, where it's a porous crystal core and we infuse diamond on the outer layer. And so we sold that from 2006 to 2010 to be able to fund our foundation. But then in 2010, we started growing consistently colorless lab-grown diamonds at about 3/4 of the carat to about 1 carat. And we had a big wait list by then. So we were just selling off the wait list with very limited supply. But now we can grow diamonds to, they're better than anything we'll ever get out of the earth now.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's talk about the giving the money away part. So you have this Greener Diamond Foundation, and through that foundation, when a MiaDonna product is purchased, a portion of the proceeds goes straight into programs that help restore the lives and land in sub-Saharan Africa. And you told us about Pon, right? That's the...
Correct. 7-year-old boy, and Maria, his mother.
And that was like the first project of the foundation, but I imagine it's gotten a lot bigger. So can you tell us, when did the Greener Diamond Foundation become part of MiaDonna's work, and are there any other projects from the foundation you want to tell the listeners about?
Well, they were created together. MiaDonna is a social enterprise. The 3 steps in a social enterprise is creating innovative products that do not do any more damage, and they're better for humanity and the environment. The second step is that then you use the profits to repair the damage. And then the third step is to be an advocate for the consumers to be able to verify your claims. And so the foundation is the giving back component to our business model and repairing the damage. So we typically fund farms. And it's not just sub-Saharan Africa, it's in many regions of the world in which diamonds have had a negative effect. And so the reason we do farms and we grow crops and we go in there and teach the locals how to grow food is that during times of conflict and for many decades, it can actually be illegal in these areas to grow food because the ground is too valuable and natural resources to grow food. And so what's so devastating about that is that these wars and these conflicts go on for generations. And so they lose the trade and they can't pass this information down to other generations. And so they're reliant on mining or aid to survive. So it keeps them in a perpetual cycle of poverty. And so that's where we come in and we try to secure land that would be used for mining and turn it back into crops. And we train, the first couple of farms we did, we were training reformed child soldiers to grow their own food. But now we go into local communities give them sustainable skills that no one can take away from them.
So these are reclaimed mines, or it's land that would have become a mine that you sort of buy and say, no?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. And we don't actually buy them. We have bought a few, but the Greener Diamond doesn't actually own them. The local community owns their land. We give it back to them.
Got it.
But the biggest obstacle with a small business in general is the limited resources. And I think it's even worse for a social enterprise. A lot of investors, a lot of banks do not like it when you say you're giving away your profits, you're a social enterprise. Everyone talks a big game. They'll say they're interested, but they're really not when it comes down to doing that. And so I think that's the biggest hurdle for small businesses in general. And it's actually hurting social enterprises, unfortunately.
So MiaDonna is technically what? Like what? It's a...
So MiaDonna is a for-profit company, and our foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit. And so I feel like the way that I like to describe it is that we're a for-profit company with a philanthropy heart. That's the reason why we're in business. Yeah.
Well done. And then just, are there any other stories from the relief missions you lead or the foundation's work before we get on to the next topic?
Oh, there's so much. Every project we do, I feel, is a huge learning experience. I'm personally involved in all the projects that we do, and I go to these places and I sit with the locals and I talk to them. I feel there's been not enough listening and talking to the people on the ground to find out exactly what the issues are and what can we do to support these communities. And what I found out, which I think was the biggest thing for me anyway, is that the projects that we were doing that were run by women were having a multiplier effect. The women were everything that we were teaching these women, they were going into the communities and teaching other women. It was multiplying. So if we were teaching one woman, we were estimating that it was actually spreading to about 5 to 10 women, which was really interesting on my part to dig into that more. And actually, now there's lots of studies that actually prove that women work from more of a community mindset when they're in business versus than just their immediate family or from an standpoint. So we do try to now. All our projects that we do have to have 50% women and 50% men at least, so we can have that sharing of information.
So Anna-Mieke, let's dive into that a little bit deeper, because we read that out of your desire to put both a modern twist and this feminine touch you're talking about on an industry heavily dominated by men and unethical standards was a core mission of yours. So could you tell us more about this idea that this industry is dominated by men? I just don't think that's something that I necessarily knew.
Yeah, well, the traditional mining industry or diamond industry, you have to be born into it the majority of the time or married into it. It's not something you can get into quite easily. And I didn't know that at the beginning. Again, like what I was saying, I was so naive. I just walked in and like, hey, I got a really great idea. But your voice is just not loud, at all. You're very dismissed. A lot of women in the diamond industry are welcome to be in the sales area, but they're not where decisions are being made. And that was very, very disappointing. And so I didn't set out to be like, I need to put a feminine touch on this industry.
Yeah.
It was the more I was involved in it, and the more I was pushed out. I mean, I've been sued. I've had gag orders. I've had, my character has been discredited
by other jewelry owners or associations, or
yeah. Well, to be honest, there's a lot of gatekeepers for the mining industries.
Okay.
First, they ignored me. What is a single mother and another mother in Africa ever going to pose a threat to the diamond and mining industries, right? But then my voice got louder. And that's when they started to get a little nervous. And so that's when they really, really came after me quite aggressively. And so it was just a big learning curve. And I'm sorry, I've kind of gone off the subject of the male and feminine roles within the diamond industry. Yeah. But there was a lot of pushback when I first started in this industry.
Well, kudos to you for fighting through all of that. The totally unwarranted accusations and gag orders is crazy. But I want to know, has that changed lately? Like, are you seeing more female owners, more female voices,
Absolutely.
or is it still a major problem?
No, I mean, it's definitely opening up. The lab-grown diamond industry we have today is not the lab-grown diamond industry we had 10 years ago. It was very separate. There was earth mine diamond industry and lab-grown diamond industry. And now, unfortunately, they've kind of merged together. People doing earth mined and now doing lab-grown. And so it's a little bit of a mix. But it was very interesting. I want to say maybe 8 years ago, I was in a meeting with the International Grown Diamond Association, which I helped create, to have a unified voice within the lab-grown diamond industry. And originally, it was myself and 7 other men that were scientists growing diamonds.
Wow.
And then a couple of years later, I came to this meeting and it was full of women that had joined the lab-grown diamond industry. They were VPs, they were CEOs, they were where the decisions were being made. And it was such a delight to see that. I mean, I can't take all the credit, but I feel like, I probably grew this faster than what it would have. That my role in this was to be an influence, I suppose, on these other women and to open the door for them. And so that was really exciting to see that this industry, the lab-grown diamond industry, was built on more of that feminine approach and not that masculine big business approach.
No doubt you were an inspiration to many of them. Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting to think about. I hadn't thought about it till you've explained all this, but you had the mined diamonds where there's this entrenched industry, entrenched interests, but then the lab grown, it's so new, you can have these new voices. There's not some existing person to knock off their pedestal. The pedestals are being created. So
exactly. And that's how we saw it. I mean, when we were first started the lab-grown diamond industry, not that we were really knowing we were creating an industry, it was built on so much excitement and innovation and intrigue on what we could do and how far we could take this. It was really fun at the beginning.
So we've talked about how the industry perhaps existed when you first entered it, but let's now focus more on your bread and butter, which is sustainable and ethical jewelry itself. So first question for you, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about diamonds or the jewelry industry in general?
Goodness, where do I start with that one? Okay, biggest misconception. Well, let's talk about conflict diamonds and the term conflict diamonds. It was great that Blood Diamond, the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, really brought this topic to the forefront. That was great. But everyone's perception of what a conflict diamond is not the legal term of what a conflict diamond is. So a conflict diamond, per the Kimberley process, is a diamond that's been mined by insurgent forces to fund war. Okay, so that leaves a huge gap of what the consumer thinks a conflict diamond is, which means that, the average person just thinks a conflict diamond is hurt humanity or hurt the environment. But that's not the case. So someone could have still been enslaved, murdered, raped, you name it, that could have still happened, but this diamond is now marketed to the consumer as conflict-free because it just didn't fund war. And so that's a huge marketing misconception. I feel it's pretty much intentionally done that. It's done that way. So it's a huge loophole that the earth mine diamond industry has.
Is there any mined certification where you're like, that's the best of the
Not
mining,
yet.
or you're just like, no one should do that at all? It's just, you got to go lab grown,
Well,
just given the state of the mining industry.
You know what? They're conflict lab grown diamonds now, unfortunately.
Tell me more. What do you mean? Like people have lab grown diamond businesses that they use to fund wars, or?
Well, let's start with a conflict diamond. So at MiaDonna, we've reevaluated what a conflict diamond is, and that is a diamond that's not sustainable and it's had a negative effect on humanity, on the environment. So that's my term of what a conflict diamond is. So like I said, 10 years ago, we were growing diamonds slowly. We were growing diamonds in America. We were growing diamonds very ethically, a lot of with renewable energy. But the earth mine diamond industry, obviously, we're trying to hold back our technology. And so through the ISO and the FTC, they were creating a lot of guidelines and a lot of rules on how we could market lab-grown diamonds. We had to call them artificial diamonds, synthetic diamonds, everything that would be very negative to the consumer. So with the International Grown Diamond Association that we formed, our first, work was to actually go against the FTC and the ISO and reevaluate what a diamond is, so we'd have some more advertising opportunities. So we actually did that in 2018, 2019, and the FTC changed the rules and very simplified. It is a diamond if they're chemically, physically, and optically identical, no matter the origin.
That's a win for you. Big win.
It was a huge win. But also, we kind of opened Pandora's box too, because that's when big business started entering the market with lab-grown diamonds. And that's why you've seen in the past couple of years, the lab-grown diamond industry and the lab-grown diamonds in general just exploding everywhere. And a lot of the marketing, you see it all over social media, sustainable diamonds, ethical diamonds. But just because a diamond is made in a lab does not automatically make it sustainable or eco-friendly or, good for humanity. We don't know how these diamonds are being made, where they're being made, who's making them, who's cutting them. So that's why, it's a little bit interesting out there right now. It's a little bit of Wild West.
So if you're the consumer and there's that Wild West out there, and we're going to get to more what the listeners should do, but just while we're on this topic, like, how does the listener cut through all that to know the lab-grown diamond they're buying is not the conflict diamond as you define it?
Yeah. You know what? There's no certifications right now that 100% guarantee it. There are other certifications that guarantee the company, like the B Corp certification. There's responsible jewelry certification. There is SCS global certifications, which MiaDonna is certified. It's about the brand, the company, and the people behind the brand that you're purchasing from. I really feel like that is the biggest thing that a consumer can do, is ask a lot of questions about not just the diamonds, but everything in the supply chain.
All right. So Anna-Mieke, you mentioned supply chain. Let's again zoom further into that component. How important is transparency and traceability within this industry, especially when it comes to the supply chain? And I think you've already alluded to the fact that the origins of these products can be so problematic. So how would you answer that question? Then perhaps describe how MiaDonna is leading the way. Well,
transparency, I think that's super important in any industry, not just this industry. As consumers, as humans, we're evolving. We know better now. We need to do things better for a planet that's already on the tipping point. Like I was saying before, the industry has changed significantly. And I got into this industry as an activist, not to be a corporate tycoon. And I've really got to be that advocate for consumers still. And so we haven't stopped evolving. We haven't stopped growing. We'll continually pivot when we learn more and know better, and how we can be the most sustainable jewelry company in the world. So what we're doing now is that our supply chain will be end to end owned by MiaDonna by the middle of next year.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, we're growing our own diamonds now. I'm a scientific advisor, so I'm involved in growing the diamonds. And by middle of next year, we'll have our own manufacturing as well. And so that's just how I can guarantee to my consumers, there's no middleman. I'm involved in every process. And, we're not perfect, but we will continue to pivot and change to be the most sustainable and eco-friendly company that there is.
I just think, Anna-Mieke, it just sounds cool when someone asks, what do you do? You say, well, I grow diamonds. It's pretty cool.
Not in your backyard.
A lot of people don't believe me.
Yeah. I hope you have like an official lab coat with like, your name and,
Yes.
you got your nice pen in your pocket. Like,
Right. Yeah. No, sorry.
No lab coat? Okay.
No lab coat.
Okay, so you just mentioned that one thing you all are in the process of doing is owning end-to-end, but you all have so many nice sustainability practices listed on your website and things you've done. So I know you ship with every order the non-toxic formula jewelry cleaner. You were the first lab-grown diamond company to become B Corp certified. And then one other one I wanted to ask about was the precious metals being 100% recycled. My understanding is a lot of competitors, they only use up to 60% recycled metals. Like, why is everyone not doing that? Is this because they can't source enough? Is it just more expensive? Yeah. What's the deal there?
So it averages between about 60 and 100. And to be honest, it's getting much harder to source that. And the reason is that now that this has become a trendy topic, it's harder to source because there is no regulations yet about what recycled gold means. And so that's kind of an issue. It does cost about 5% more to use recycled metals as well. Like, doing things right does always cost a bit more. And, 100% recycled gold is from pre and post consumer products. And so we always strive for that. And I mean, it has crossed my mind, damn, do I need to open a refinery now and find that gold, one thing at a time. But
sure.
But yes, a gold can be just as conflict as diamonds can be. And in some areas of the world, even more. Actually, a project we did 2 years ago was in the DRC, in a few mining communities for gold there. And it's estimated that women in that area are, 48 women raped every hour in these areas as a form of torture and control in those areas. So the conflict, even in 2024, is still very real.
Wow. Okay.
So Anna-Mieke, what other advice would you give to someone who wants to learn more about conflict-free diamonds? For example, what due diligence do you encourage consumers to do when they're in the market for diamonds or perhaps other jewelry pieces?
Part of my business model is being an advocate for consumer. And like I was just saying, it is backing up all our claims with third-party verifications. That's what you need to look for. Okay. You can't take what a company says at face value right now. The greenwashing, I feel, is out of control. Sustainability is such a buzzword right now that they're throwing it around like confetti. And so, that's what I always tell people. I say, you look at the third-party verifications.
And the third parties, you mentioned, I think, SGS, like who should they be looking for?
I mean, there are many, and there's many in different countries as well. I like the Responsible Jewelry Council, SCS Global, and B Corporation, I feel, are the top three for me. But then there, it goes further than that as well. There are some individual labs that can be certified sustainable as well. And then there's also manufacturing. So it can branch off as well. But I feel like if a company is willing to prove and be proud of their certifications, because they're not easy to get, I think that means a lot.
Okay, so asking about the level of recycled material, asking the people that work there how much they know about sustainability, because that, I think, gives you a sense of the level of commitment to sustainability in the company.
Correct.
Looking for third-party certifications. Anything else listeners should look for when it comes to trying to purchase as sustainable as can be lab-grown diamonds?
Well, hopefully now they're a little bit educated as well that, don't believe the Kimberley process. If you go into an Earth Mine diamond store, a lot of times they'll say, if you ask about conflict-free diamonds, they'll be, oh, don't worry, these are certified by the Kimberley process. Well, hopefully now they know that you just walk away from that store because it doesn't mean anything.
Well, the Kimberley process, I don't know if we've talked about that.
So the Kimberley process is the ones that legally determine what a conflict diamond is. And so the problem is that their definition of a conflict diamond is far too narrow, and it only means a diamond that has funded war. And so a lot of consumers think that it hasn't funded any kind of conflict, but that's not the case. It's only it hasn't funded war.
Okay, so Kimberley process refers to that not so great definition of conflict diamond we're talking about. Okay.
Correct.
And then let's talk about the future. So maybe you'll be purchasing a refinery at some point, so we know that might be in your future. But are there any other trends around sustainable jewelry that you think our definers should watch or be aware of?
Well, innovation of lab-grown diamonds has not finished, has not ended. We're still developing and testing new technologies, and I think it'll be the norm in a couple of years where we're using carbon capture to be able to grow our diamonds. We're already testing it. We already have some diamonds on our website that are growing from carbon capture. So, basically these are carbon negative diamonds.
That is cool.
It is pretty cool. Yeah. So innovation is the heart of MiaDonna, and also sustainability. So like I said, we're not perfect, but we'll always continue to strive to be better as we learn better. And we know how to do things better.
Okay.
And Anna-Mieke, anything else you would like to share with our listeners about your work or MiaDonna, which I don't know if we mentioned is very cleverly named after both your daughter and your mother?
Correct. Yeah. My daughter is actually MiaDonna. I named her. So my late mother is Donna. My daughter was born in 2004. I named her MiaDonna, and then I started the business in 2005. And they'll never meet in this life. My mother died when I was a child, and so they'll always be forever connected within this company, which I love. Yeah. Yeah. Pity my daughter doesn't want anything to do with the company.
Really?
She's out of here. Yeah. She grew up, that's the only thing she's ever known is the life of lab growing diamonds. I mean, she could probably do this interview as well. It's just as good as I could because she's growing up in it.
That's like my fiance with can recycling. She's like, yeah, I could do your job. No problem.
You're right. Yeah.
Well, let's transition now to our traditional last question on our show, which is our party fact question. So let's say maybe we're all at a nice party down in Australia. We've got folks hanging around and some folks perhaps are wearing jewelry with diamonds. And let's, for example, say that one of our definers is at this party and they notice someone's diamond and want to share a fact with them that conveys how important not just MiaDonna's work is, but sustainable jewelry in general, using this diamond as a launch point. What would be a party fact or a statistic that this definer could share with the party that conveys how important this topic is?
Well, we do have statistics on 1 2-carat diamond ring from MiaDonna. We actually saved 25,000 gallons of water, wow. 15,000 kilowatts of energy, 500 tons of soil, 14 tons of CO2, and 13 tons of toxic waste from being released into the environment. So it shows the importance of being a conscious consumer, right? That I know it's hard, price and marketing play a huge part in buying decisions. But if consumers just stopped a little bit, how to look at the facts, how to look at the businesses that they're purchasing from, they can use their economic power to really put this world on a more sustainable path.
Anna-Mieke, I'm sorry, I'm still picking my jaw up off the floor. Could you repeat that? That was incredible.
Yeah.
That's a party fact. But I want to know, is that compared to what? A 2-carat just earth mined diamond?
Yes. So a MiaDonna lab-grown diamond made in our facilities in 100% recycled metals compared to a 2-carat earth mined diamond in newly mined gold. That's the comparison.
Wow. And that's just 1 2-carat piece.
Correct.
And those differences.
Correct.
Those were big numbers.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around.
Exactly.
I mean, how many tons of dirt for this like tiny little thing?
500 tons.
I mean, that's
500 tons of soil just for one piece.
Exactly, because you don't know how much soil you have to move to get to that one piece.
My goodness.
My goodness.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that. That is a hell of a party fact right there.
Mining has the largest carbon footprint than any other form of human activity. And it's outdated for the society. There are so many innovative ways that we don't need to mine anymore. It's just not right for today's society. And, it's another interesting fact that we're actually, I'm not in the mining industry, but they're actually running out of diamonds to mine. It's estimated in about 10 years, there will be no more diamonds to mine because we've mined them all.
Just 10 years?
10 years. If they don't find another big deposit, they'll be out of diamonds to mine. And what's happening now is that these mining companies are going into way more remote locations where the ecosystems are so fragile that they're creating more environmental damage than they ever have before. I mean, De Beers are now mining in the ocean as well, trying to find new deposits of diamonds. So hopefully it'll be and a really old industry that no one really cares about in the next couple of decades.
Yeah.
Is my goal anyway.
And we can deliver the same benefits and enjoyment that we get from diamonds in just this much more sustainable way. Like you said, it's not perfect, but man, compared to the alternative, those are big differences.
Correct.
Well, I'm bringing you to my next party, so thank you. And thank you for joining us and giving so many great insights and for taking this on when you did. I mean,
Absolutely.
Like you said, you just saw a problem and so many people are like, oh, that sucks. I mean, just kind of like Jay and I are like, oh man, this is a big problem.
Yeah.
And then, we're going to move on to our next episode or, our day jobs or whatever. But you saw it and started a whole freaking company and took it on. It's amazing.
It really is. When I look back, I kind of get exhausted. Like, damn, I don't know if I could do that again. But owning and running a social enterprise, you need to really have a topic that keeps you up at night, because the grit that you'll need and the energy you'll need, it has to be a passion that's like burning inside you.
Well, we can hear that passion still. So thank you again for joining us. And
thank you.
Yeah, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Amazing. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Scott, we've been working our way through this fantastic episode. This whole time, I've had just one song stuck in the back of my mind, and I'm pretty sure it's related.
Sure.
If you like it, you should just put a ring on it, is all I'll say.
I don't think any of the lyrics there were about sustainability, though.
Well, as far as relationships go, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just got to take the ring that you can just to, lock that up. But I guess if you feel like you have to lock it up at the expense of sustainability, that's probably not a very strong relationship.
Right. Grounds for a deeper conversation.
Yes.
All right. So as we wrap up, we want to thank a few folks. First, Taylor Price, again, killing it on the intro notes.
Love it.
Keaton Butler, again, killing it on the audio editing. We've got one hell of a crew, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Also want to extend a thank you to Square Peg, Round Hole, and Potions for the music we use in our episode.
I also want to thank Katie Moore, Senior Manager, Publicity and Partnerships at MiaDonna and Company. She's been super helpful from the beginning with this partnership and reviewing the substance of the episode to make sure that we were saying all the right things. Also, thanks to Katie for suggesting that discount we mentioned at the top of the show. 10% off your purchase of $500 or more at MiaDonna.com with the code DEFINERS. That offer expires December 31st, 2024. And Jay, we have a review.
All right.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So this is from LL Breen, not LL Bean, LL Breen.
Right.
July 12th, 2024. It's titled Insightful and Enjoyable Podcast. I like where this is going, Jay. LL Breen wrote, I appreciate the podcast format, starting with background information to set the stage, followed by insightful interviews with experts, and concluding with a fun fact. The podcast excels at simplifying complex topics for all listeners to grasp. The host's strong rapport and engaging delivery make it a delightful listening experience.
Wow.
LL Breen.
A delightful listening experience. That is just heartwarming.
Jay, you think we like each other? You think we have a rapport?
I'm wondering if LL Breen actually knows that you officiated my wedding. So I dare say yes. And Scott, before we do wrap up, I want to say congratulations to you and Shannon. This is so exciting.
Yes, we're very excited. We're very excited. And we should probably tell the listeners, though, Jay, as you are having baby number one.
Yes.
A boy.
Yes, it's a little boy.
Right? We can divulge all of this. And then I'm getting married in August. We're going to take a little bit of a break. I do hope, Jay, we can find one of those episodes with Uproot Project where we can play audio from a diverse environmental writer or podcaster or whatever.
Love it.
So hopefully we can put that together for the next couple months, but just so people know, we will be taking a break.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jay, I think that about does it. You all stay sustainable out there. I'm Scott Breen.
And I'm Jay Siegel. We will see you next time.